Hello, my name is Sukchan Ko. I'm a professor of Dankook University in the Department of Urban Planning and Real Estate. I have been affiliated with this university for 27 years. And my research interest is mainly focused on industrial park and urban economics. After I studied in the United States about the research at triangle parks, I came back to Korea and I had an experience of consulting many technoparks in Korea, and I also had served as a member of a committee for evaluation of technoparks. So I want to share my knowledge with you today and about the technoparks, and then I want you to learn something from my experience and my knowledge. Thank you. The reason why I chose these three topics for you trainees is because I thought that they are very important for you to understand. First of all, the recent trends and characteristics of science and technology parks overall. And then the second topic is about Korean technoparks, their historical background, their growth processes, and their success factors. Third, I want you to know and understand the evaluation of technoparks, what kind of indicators and why to evaluate and what to evaluate. So these are the topics I prepared for you. I hope you learned something from my lecture. Well, I don't have much information about you trainees. So through my lecture, I want you to understand the existing knowledge and the nature and the characteristics of science and the technology park. And also, you need to learn the success factors, but you have to learn from our mistakes. So don't make our mistakes again when you build your own science technology park. Remember, every country has their own assets, and then you need to figure out how to find the best way for your own establishing science and technology park. And the most important thing is science and technology park is about the people and their attitude and their ambition. So any country or any place can have a chance to succeed. Hello, my name is Sukchan Ko. It's my pleasure to meet you through the education program of the Korea Technopark Promotion Association in 2020. I hoped we can have a face-to-face lecture in the classroom, but it is regrettable that we can't meet in class due to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. I hope you keep your health well. And the title of my first lecture is Recent Trends and the Policy Implications of Science and Technology Parks. And I consisted of 4 chapters according to our topic of this year. As you all know, the topic is technology innovation, empowerment in developing countries based on Korea Technopark models. So let me start with the introduction part, and then let's move on the existing knowledge on science technoparks in the world. And then next, we will move on to the nature and the characteristics of science and technology parks, and then we will draw some lessons and policy implications. The use of science and technology for the development of human civilization has a long history. Dr. Peter Hall, who was a famous scholar in urban planning, wrote a book titled Cities in Civilization. It's a very long book. You may be difficult to finish reading because it's almost more than 1,000 pages. And in his book, he raised these questions, as you can see here. What brings a city to its golden age throughout history? That was his first question. And then he raised another question. Why does the creative and innovative spirit of one city inevitably yield to another? It doesn't last forever. Why? And third question was, so what he did was he reviewed from ancient Athens to present Silicon Valley, and then he revealed from his research and the innovative milieu is the key and important. What is innovative milieu? As you can see here, it's a human ecosystem which contains a disproportionate numbers of creative individuals and openness. So the question is, how can we create this innovative ecosystem? So many scholars try to did some research on how to create this. And then the key is because to attract talented people to this innovative ecosystem. So as Peter Hall mentioned in his book, the Silicon Valley is the most innovative place in the contemporary world. It all started with the creation of Stanford Industrial Park in 1951. Later, they changed the name Stanford Research Park instead of Industrial Park. But think about at the time, the idea of building an industrial complex, industrial park in a university campus was a very strange idea, novel idea at the time. Since then, so many regions have tried to replicate the Stanford Research Park model because they believed that the development of a science technology park was an inevitable step in the evolutionary process of technological innovation. As you can see, the evolutionary process of technological innovation is something like this. It started in the industrial parks and districts starting from 19th century and early 20th century. And then the next stage was science and technology parks. And then recently, they emerged some different the type of models. We can call it innovation district since 2010. So almost 70 years have passed since the creation of Stanford Research Park. Let me show you what happened afterwards, presenting this world map over here. This map indicates the spatial distribution of technological innovation is very spiky, which means not evenly distributed over space. The pattern of concentration of innovative activities in places in the world is quite striking. And you may wonder why and what caused this pattern of distribution. And is it desirable in this kind of distribution? Or do we have to do some effort to change this? Well, I think we need to more effort to change this. So all these kind of innovative activities occur in every place in the world. That's the key. Okay, this is another map which shows you the global location of innovation clusters, core technologies, and spatial distribution patterns of key companies. What triggers these results was the subject of my researches for a long time. And these researches found that there have been systematic efforts such as the creation and the management of science technology parks. That's why we need to learn about science and technology parks, their characteristics, and when and where or how can we create these science technology parks. Okay, let's move on to the second chapter of my lecture. To let you know about science and technology parks, let me introduce to you the definition of science and technology park concept and their growth processes and the related issues based on the results of academic research so far. The formation of a science technology park began with the necessity of linking the separate functions, which were performed in separate institutions in different locations. As you can see over here, education and training was performed in universities, and the research and development were performed in research institute, and industrial production were performed in industrial parks. So those separate institutions and performed their functions in separate spaces. Now, as time goes by, the contemporary society needs to link these two functions together. So the research centers created, and the science research parks created, and also the technology parks created. And in more urban scale, science city and the technopolis is created too. Now, how can we define the science park, research park, and technology park? They have different names, but they function the same function these days because they are becoming more and more alike. Originally, they function differently. So the concept of names of science technology park are different between regions and countries. As you can see, the names are different, but they share common characteristics. And the naming of parks are very interesting because Americans prefer using research park. Most of them are related to the university. And the British prefer using science park. Of course, there is a couple of research parks in England, in UK. Other countries, including Asian countries, they prefer using technology park instead of research park or science park. Because Asian countries, they are not confident enough about their level of scientific knowledge and technology. And their level of universities are like inferior to the advanced countries. So that they prefer the science park. Also, they are more practical regions. And Asian countries prefer using technology park because they thought it's more practical, and then technology commercialization was their goal, and then assist the businesses. Okay, let's define then whatever you call it. The Science and Technology Park is a property-based initiative and has a formal links with the university or other higher educational and research institutions. And also they encourage the formation and growth of knowledge-based businesses and other organizations normally reside on the site. They also perform management functions, which is currently engaged in the transfer of technology and the business skills to the organizations on site as a facilitator. Well, these days they call it accelerator too. Now, let's define Science City. You need to distinguish between a Science Technology Park and the Science City. City is also called the Technopolis. Science City is an urban development which is much larger in scale than a Science Technology Park. Building a Science City is often linked to the development of urban infrastructure for new towns, as a case of Daedok Innopolis in Korea and the Tsukuba Science City in Japan. Also, there is an example of Sophia Antipolis in France. So, how can we define Science City? It's an urban development which is much larger in scale, and they often link to the development of infrastructure involved with the creation of a new settlement. Technopolis, the Sheridan Tachuno wrote a book, and then he invented this language, Technopolis, in 1986. And also the Science City development have national and regional objective. Well, actually, Daedok Innopolis was created in order to advance our scientific and then technological capability for the whole nation. Okay, here's the third type. More recently, a new type called Innovation District has emerged as a new complementary urban model. The definition is presented here. The Innovation District is a geographic area where leading-edge anchor institutions such as university or hospital or private companies' research lab and company cluster, and they connect with startups and business incubators and accelerators. They are also physically compact transit accessible, and technically wired, and after mixed-use housing, office and retail. It's like more like a complex, multiple complex development. And innovation districts can be classified into 3 different types. The first type is called Anchor Plus. If you can find an anchor institution in the city center, like a central business district, and you can develop innovation district. And the best example is Kendall Square in Cambridge, MIT, and Philadelphia's University City, etc. There's another type, regenerated urban areas. And the best example is the Model 22 Barcelona in Spain, and Brooklyn Navy Yard, and in New York, San Francisco's Mission Bay, and Boston's South Waterfront. Those are a redevelopment project. And the third type is called urbanized science park model. And North Carolina's Research Triangle Park. Well, actually, it started with a small-scale park, but now it becomes about 28 kilometers large. The park itself becomes like a city. Okay, that's another case. Here's another case, like University of Arizona Technology Park in Tucson, Arizona. Now, let's move on to the evolution of a science technology park development model. Early parks, as shown in this table, have evolved in 4 stages with different characteristics. In early period, starting from 1950s and 1980s, the park resembled a standalone physical complex located mostly in suburban areas. In the 1990s, the park took the role of incubators and technology transfer centers, and they built multi-tenant facilities for the small and medium companies. In the early 2000s, science and technology parks are more like mixed-use complexes for a region through technology commercialization. More recently, however, science and technology parks become innovation district, emerging in the core of central business district through urban regeneration project. Now, nobody knows exactly how many science and technology parks currently exist in the world. While some scholars argue the numbers are several hundreds or several thousand, but it all depends on how you define the science and technology parks. According to the ISCOP, that's the abbreviation of the Economic and the Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific data, the number of science and technology parks varies from country to country, as you can see over here. Well, currently, China has about 80 science technology parks. Is the largest number. And the United States of America has 72, and UK has 63, France has 60, Finland 24, Japan 22, Korea is 19. But considering the size of a population, Korea has too many science and technology parks. And average of other 52 countries have about 3 technoparks in their country. So it all depends on how you define and how you name those parks. But some of these might be like commercial office complex, or maybe some other commercial complexes. Developing and managing science technology parks should take into account various issues as presented in this figure over here. The first and the most important is location and the site viability. And the second one is economic and the physical viability of a region. And the level of science and technology is also important. And the industrial specialization of the region is to be considered too. And the marketing plans and strategy. All these issues are involved. And also there is the politics. So it's much better for you to exclude the politics in the process of developing science technology park. If politics get involved, sometimes, and that gives the opportunity to fail. So when you design a science and technology park in your own region, and well, sometimes it went smoothly, but if you consider these factors and more in detail, and then you can have a chance to have more successful the creation of scientific science and technology parks. Okay, let's move on to chapter 3. In this chapter, I would like to describe the nature and the characteristics of science and technology parks based on survey results. Well, actually, I collected the data from two different organizations. One is the Association of University Research Parks in America, and the other one is the International Association of Science Parks. Well, first of all, let me discuss about the characteristics of university research parks in North America on their physical size, and the location, and organization, and finance. As you can see here, the typical university research parks is this size, 119 acres large, but it's equal to 481,000 square meters. They are not that big. And normally they have 7 buildings open, and this size, more than 23,000 square meters. And 90% of the space is currently occupied. And the University Research Park is located in a suburban jurisdiction with a population of 500,000 or less. So most of them exist in near universities in the United States of America. The universities are located more in suburban areas rather than locating in the central business district. The university research parks in the U.S., they are operated by university or university-affiliated non-profit foundation. Well, their number of tenants are about 26 and organizations. 64% of those residents are profit companies like venture businesses and the startup companies and spin-off companies. And 24% are the university facilities and 4% are government agencies. So all these organizations with different characteristics are agglomerated in University Research Park in the United States. Well, let's talk about finances of this University Research Park. Their operating budget of less than $1 million a year. And well, they receive this revenue primarily from park operations like rent. But also the university and the state government and the local government and other sources provide their resources, financial resources. According to the survey, typical research parks in the United States employs about 850 persons, and majority of them are engineers and scientists, and provide diverse business assistance services, as you can see over here. And the parks provide a range of businesses, including and help accessing state and other public programs, and linking to or providing sources of capital, venture capital for startup companies. And also they provide business planning, and they provide marketing and sales strategy advice. And also they provide assistance to access to subsidized space. technology and market assessment. So their functions, they tend to increase as time goes by. More than 70% of the parks established after 1990. The earliest park opened in 1951. The name is Stanford Research Park. And the most recent in 2011. But most of them are not that old, about 20 or 30 years. Quite a few university research parks existed over 50 years. Here, the most recent park is 2011 is because they conducted this survey in 2012. The majority of research parks in North America are likely to have a mix of a multi-tenant and a single-tenant commercial space with specialized labs. Having a mix of multi-tenant and single-tenant and commercial space supportive of research and development activities, 75% contain specialized lab facilities and conference facilities and even hotels. And they have a trend towards incorporating mixed use, live, work, play environment day by day. And more parks offer housing facilities, restaurants, and retail shops. And university research parks are increasingly part of an urban redevelopment. And this trend is moving slowly toward more urban location than suburban location. The financing, the ongoing physical development of university research parks stands out as a key challenge these days. And so the university research parks is trying to attract tenants, and there's very fierce competition going on these days. So university research parks try to have the basic quality and then control this quality and then lower the costs to attract more tenants. Although there are some differences in the survey results between International Association of Science Parks and Association of University Research Parks, the comparison of factors affecting to stay in the science and technology parks reveals that the university's human resources, facilities, equipment, and flexible occupancy space, as well as image and the prestige of the park are important factors. Look here, image and prestige. Yeah, these two different surveys reveal this kind of abstract image and prestige are important. Yeah. So it's like building a science research park. We have to also remember that it's building a reputation and image. This is in order of importance. So in the case of IASB survey, the image and prestige was #1 factor of importance. And here in American University Research Park survey, and the access to skilled workforce is the most important factor. So you can compare how they're different in the order of importance here. So far, we have reviewed the existing knowledge and the nature and the characteristics of science and technology parks. Now, what are the overall lessons and policy implications that we can draw from all these? Before we built Korean Technoparks, we did quite extensive researches, including case studies, surveys, interviews, and the feasibility studies to figure out key success factors from the experiences of others. Here are some of the success factors known from the previous studies. I hope you learned something useful from these success factors. The first of all, setting the strategy and objectives of a new park and deciding on the best model for implementation is very important. The second, engagement of the knowledge base. And you need to review what kind of knowledge base or specialty in technology in your region has. An active and effective and multidimensional relationship with a university is important, or other public sector research organizations. That means if you don't have any, you start building university or research institute first before you start building a science park. Interaction with the public sector at the local government, regional government, even a national government. Science and technology parks are not stand-alone organization. So the interaction with these government, the level of governments are very important because they have to support financially from the beginning. And sourcing, securing the land, capital, and revenue to establish a science technology park and ensure its ongoing growth is time-consuming. It almost takes, if you want to have a successful science technology park, it almost takes about more than 20 years. Sometimes it can be 50 years to make something useful for your region. So the time plan is very important. And assessing the nature of a local skill base. Well, as I mentioned in the earlier of my lecture, to attract talented people is the key. So if you don't have local skill, the resources, personnel, or talented people in your region, it's very difficult to create a science park successfully. Now, selecting the package of services. These parks exist to assist those companies, small and medium enterprises in your region. So the package of services, what kind of a package of services do you want to deliver to those firms? So you need to figure out the demand. So package of services to deliver to talented companies and businesses in wider economy, not just your own local area, but to the regional area too. And also you have to decide on the appropriate science park model. Well, we took extensive researches to figure out what might be the appropriate for Korean local areas in Korea. So we come up with the idea of creating 18 technoparks in each metropolitan areas and provincial administrative areas. But KTP model might not be appropriate for your country or your region. So you have to figure out what might be the appropriate science park model in your country or region. Selecting a strong leadership based on a broad committee structure that has good connection into the local economy and then CEO with appropriate sector experience and also management skills. But this kind of leader is very hard to find. So that's the key here. So you need to train the leadership available in your country. Okay, now I provided 2 quizzes. Well, I think it's too easy to answer. But the first one is, which country has established the largest number of STPs up until 2017? And which one of the following description of the evolutionary process of technological innovation is correct? Well, this quiz might be a little bit difficult for you to choose the correct one. Okay, thank you for your attention, and I will see you in the second lecture.